Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles! Resolve. In the last episode, we had a dance of deduction, and we had a little poke around of the crime scene, as it seems to be murder, and we filled up our inventory a little bit, which is something new because in the first game we investigated and we rarely got any new items in the court record. But now we do, and that is cool, but we are done here. So we are going to move to Mr. Garrideb's and Mrs. Garrideb's room. Let's have a look what else is there we can go. Okay, so we are going to go to all these places anyway, but we're gonna start in Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb's room. So let's have a look what there is to be seen. 21st February, the Garrideb's room. Here we are again, the eccentric landlord's eccentric top floor abode. We're here because Mr. Garrideb's the one who discovered the incident this morning, don't forget.
You chaps,
Yes, good morning, sir.
Thank you for your cooperation court yesterday.
It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garrideb as anyone, really.
Came straight back here after all the business at the Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more bally nonsense this morning.
I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garrideb.
Yes, I suppose you'd like to know all about that dead loss of an actor chap in the ground floor room.
Those were exactly Inspector Gregson's words, weren't they? Well, we could converse immediately, but I want to check out the place first. So let's have a look. Good to see Mr. Garrideb's Medal of Honor still proudly displayed on the wall. The inscription reads, "For distinguished participation," if you remember. Yes, I remember, because I remember thinking even I might stand a chance of picking up honors like that.
Wouldn't know it to look at me now, perhaps, but I had my devil-may-care days, you know.
Devil-may-care? What did you get up to?
Well, all in the past now, of course, and best left there.
Best not. I want to know now. Well, you won't tell us. Okay, let's have a look at the uniform. That's your military uniform, isn't it, Mr. Garrideb?
Well, ceremonial garb, yes. Been hanging on the wall ever since my retirement badge. Not an active service now, you know. Doesn't mean much to me anymore. You could have the old thing if you wanted it.
Well, it might suit Lord Van Zeeks, perhaps. An overly ostentatious outfit like this could be just what he needs. Very tactful, Mr. Sato. Very tactful indeed. So there's the cannon. There's a single apron drying on that enormous cannon-shaped clothes horse. Look. No, Mr. Naruto. That's a real cannon. I knew that. I was just testing you.
Piece of history, that is. Seen plenty of action in the battlefield, I can tell you. Now the old girl and I are just enjoying the peace and quiet of retirement together. And of course, she'd come in handy if the enemy decided to launch an attack again.
Is there a war going on either that I don't know about? Alright. Anything else here? So there are the books. Oh, a copy of Rand's magazine! The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is being read all over London. Isn't it wonderful?
Naturally, one asks oneself if such a singular detective could really exist. But having met the chap, it's undeniable. He is most certainly singular. Singularly dangerous.
That's genuine public opinion for you, Mr. Sato. Perhaps it should be reflected in the stories. Make no mistake, Mr. Naruto. I intend to snuff out the sort of public opinion we just heard personally. I'm starting to see where Mr. Sholmes' untainted reputation comes from now. Well, okay. So, what about... we can't check out the hearth? I learned that in the last episode. It's a hearth. Okay, so let's have a look at the cakes. That's an impressive collection of cakes on that fancy silver cake stand there. I feel sure that it was full of cakes when we first investigated in here as well.
Yes, quite right. Haven't touched it since. Haven't done much at all, really, since it all happened. Time's rather stood still for me, you know.
Oh, time has stood still? Now that's an interesting phrase. You might be able to use that excuse when I'm next supposed to be tidying the office. You could just tidy up, Mr. Naruto. She gets us every time. Okay, the shelves? What about the shelves? Those shelves look like they've been completely torn apart by a wild beast.
Reminds me of the Battle of Mayvon, don't you know?
Ah, the experiences of a seasoned veteran.
Enemy had us surrounded on all sides. We really thought we were done for. The whole Bally Company. We were taking a real pounding from their cannons, so all we could do was run for our lives.
Oh, I thought that story was going in a different direction, actually.
Well, the whole experience taught me one thing, I can tell you. When you're done for, you're really done for.
Ugh, that's not what a lawyer who often finds himself under fire wants to hear. That is true. What about the window? There's a good view over the wintry East End from up here. It's an oppressively grey scene. There's really nothing comparable in Japan. And down below, Briar Road, partly blanketed in snow. And the pavement where poor Miss Green was struck in the back by that knife. Thinking about it, this is the only room in this building that actually has a window to the outside world. Sometimes, Great Britain really does seem like a strange land, doesn't it? I suppose all foreign cultures seem strange at first. Imagine how an English woman would feel on arriving in Japan and seeing people with a con-mage topknot. Well, that's a good point. And what about this little paravan? Sorry guys. We know that screen is hiding now. The aftermath of the fire altercation the other day.
Don't suppose I'll be able to clear that mess up for some time now.
Oh dear, this must be a very difficult situation for you.
I'll say, people talk about twists of fate and whatnot. But this is a twist and a half, a rotten show all around.
He's clearly struggling with everything that's happened. Well, we checked out everything, didn't we? No, we didn't. Ah, okay, so let's have a look at these shells. Oh yes, those enormous mortar shells. It's quite something seeing them up close, isn't it? Didn't you say something about firing them into the barracks, Mr. Garrideb?
Oh, you remember, do you? Just a little mishap that occurred during training one day. What are you doing firing on your own men? The captain bellowed at me.
I'm not surprised. A little mishap doesn't really do it justice, does it?
Well, one has these little incidents when one's a hot-headed young private.
Perhaps I should put some evidence that resulted from one of my little mishaps on display. Oh, does the great lawyer, like the great detective, want to exhibit some trophies of his finest moments? Not yet. Okay, let's have a look at the lion. You look very dashing in your uniform there, Mr. Garrideb.
Oh, that old portrait, drawn by an art student who used to rent the room downstairs.
Oh, you look so wonderfully young and courageous and strong.
Yes, well, the chap presented it to me one day and asked if I'd let him off the month's rent in return.
Oh, I see. So you did, presumably.
I bally well did not.
Oh.
A portrait is a portrait, but rent is rent. Huh?
And yet it's still there proudly on the wall. But that was all, right? There shouldn't be anything left. No, it doesn't seem that way. We had a look at everything. So now it's time to talk, but we're gonna present first. We're gonna present the... we're gonna start with the armband, because we always do that. Mr. Garrideb, could I show you this?
Been quite a couple of days, as you can imagine. I'm afraid I'm rather tired. Haven't really got the energy in the old eyeballs, to be honest with you.
Some other time then. Okay, so he doesn't want to talk about that. The second-hand book receipt. I didn't even... okay, so we still have that. So we're gonna present that too. Mr. Garrideb. Nope. He won't tell us anything about that one. What about the nearby street map? We haven't... we had... just as a reminder, if you haven't watched that third case, you can do that by going to my channel and clicking on the playlist button. I have a playlist for the first game and the third adventure, which is the Clouded Kokoro. We had this map and we discovered some quite stunning things. So if you haven't watched that, just go back to my channel and click on playlists. There is a playlist for Let's Play the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles Adventures. Let's show him. Let's show him. I almost forgot. Mr. Garrideb, could I show you this? Okay, so we're gonna skip past. What about this then? Do you know anything about the torn off end of envelope? Mr. Garrideb, could I show you this? No, he doesn't. Okay, so we're gonna skip. And what about the bar of soap? Do you know anything about that? Mr. Garrideb, okay. Unfortunately. So that means that we can just talk to him. Let's converse this morning's incident. It must have been a real shock for you this morning. I hear that you discovered what had happened.
Oh, well, that hopeless actor chap rises at 5 o'clock sharp here every morning without fail. But at 5:30 this morning, he still hadn't lit the gas. So I went down and knocked on his door, but no bally answer.
And that's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door?
Well, I called on that rum-locking Japanese chap to do the grunt work, of course.
Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down? The man could have just overslept by half an hour. That's very true, Mr. Naruto. If 30 minutes oversleeping warranted such behavior, I'd have to kick your door down every morning.
Well, better to be safe than sorry and all that.
Is it just me, or is he avoiding our gaze now all of a sudden? Except that it was a sorry situation indeed that you found on the far side of the door. Well, that's true. That's a little bit... Okay, that is weird. So let's talk about Mr. Shamspeare. The victim's name is Mr. Shamspeare, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, William Shamspeare. Took the ground floor of room 3 months ago now.
And how would you describe him?
In a word, destitute.
Destitute?
Well, let's face it, the only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone wanting to live in that place like that is either broke or has a bally screw loose.
So hard to choose which category Soseki-san would fall into. Mr. Naruto, that's a little rude.
He was doing research as well.
Research? Into what?
Shakespeare, of course. Shakespeare.
Uh-huh.
Read a few plays of the old bard myself, Romeo and Hamlet and all that.
Yes, William Shakespeare is England's most highly regarded classical playwright and author. He's known as Sao in Japanese, as you know, and many of his works have already been translated. It seems incredible that Shakespeare was shortened to Sao, though. Someone was too heavy-handed there. There were a lot of costumes in the victim's room, actually, weren't there? Of course, Mr. Natsume is a scholar of English literature as well. I imagine he and Mr. Shamspeare would have had much in common. Shakespeare interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. Let's hope it's not that. Mr. Naruto, really? How rude! Yesterday's events. After Mr. Natsume's trial yesterday, you came straight back here, I believe, didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between then and this morning?
Well now, must have been about 6 in the evening by the time I got home. Snow was coming down rather heavily as I remember, and it was completely dark already. That failed actor chap was out at the time.
Mr. Garrideb noticed there was no light from his room or something, I suppose?
Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I just sat in front of the fire up here. It was after 8 before Shamsby got back. And the chap was up until past 1 in the morning. Past 1 in the morning, I'll have you know. Suppose he met his end sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there.
Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. Is everything alright, Mr. Sato? Well, I was just thinking it's a little strange, that's all. Mr. Garrideb, you were up here in your room all evening, if I've understood correctly.
Not a big fan of stairs, not with this blasted leg.
Then, how is it that you seem to know? The precise movements of your tenant on the ground floor, I mean.
Oh!
That's a very good point. I can't imagine that you could hear noises from the ground floor all the way up here. Does this old man like to spy on his tenants? Is that it?
I say, I know what you're thinking, and it's a bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants. Why would I?
Then how did you know, Mr. Garrideb?
It's the gas, woman. The gas tells me everything.
The gas? Speaking gas, we already had a look at the meter, the gas meter, so we have a little bit of an idea what he's talking about, but of course we're going to talk about it anyway. What on earth do you mean, sir? How can the gas tell you anything, let alone everything?
Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is supplied to the building by pipes.
Yes, I'd more or less worked that out. Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the gas main outside, and the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main. Yes, I understand that too.
Let me see if I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen?
Well, obviously the room would get brighter.
Exactly. But at the same time, the lights in all the other rooms of the house would dim for a moment.
What? They'd dim? Why? Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual, and that reduces the amount of gas in the pipe for the other lamps that are connected to it. That might explain why the other lamps dim momentarily, mightn't it? Yes, of course, because everything's connected to a single supply pipe. Is that supposed to happen, though? It sounds rather undesirable.
Jolly good point. Fact is, the gas company's pipes in these parts are pretty hopeless, long worn out, and barely got any gas in them to start with. But opposite's also true, of course. Extinguish the lamps up here, and they glow bright in the rest of the house.
Ah, right, I see. So by watching the flickering of the lamps in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere.
You've got it.
Oh, of course, because when people come back home in the evening and before they go to sleep at night, what they're guaranteed to do is either light or put out their lamps and fires. Clever.
In point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it use slightly different amounts of gas. By watching the lights in here closely, I can work out almost exactly what's going on in the whole house.
Gosh, that's fascinating, Mr. Garrideb. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh well, nothing to it really.
And I can't really see that it's going to help us with the case either. What I'd like to know is why Mr. Garrideb is so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place. I feel like there's more to it than an idle curiosity. So we can't answer that yet, it seems, because we can't present anything either. So, seems like we're done here for the time being. So let's move. The question is, where do we move? We could move to Sholmes' suite, which doesn't do anything. We were here a moment ago. So let's go to Briar Road for a second and see what's gonna happen here. 21st February, Briar Road. Okay, nothing, but we can examine things here, and we're gonna do that, of course. So let's have a look at the door. The Garrideb household and Mr. Natsuma's lodgings are in prominent position there on the corner. Sometimes when I look at the building, I can't help feeling that it's a bit of a slant. It
does rather look as though it would collapse in even the smallest earthquake, doesn't it?
And isn't it supposed to be haunted as well? I think I might have a hunch to why Soseki-san has such a hunched back. Okay, let's have a look at the bike.
There always seems to be bicycle outside the Garrideb residence. I read that bicycles are extremely popular all over Great Britain at the moment, in fact.
That one seems very warped up though, especially the front wheel. Is that to make it more of a challenge to ride, do you think?
No, I'm afraid that might be a result of the rider's incompetence. For the front wheel to be so badly warped, I'm afraid the rider may have been similarly afflicted.
Then there's a good chance Mr. Natsume has been practicing on this bicycle, I think.
Oh dear, I fear you may be right.
Oh, unfortunate. Okay, so let's have a look at the bricked windows. With the exception of the top floor where Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb live, all the windows are bricked up.
Yes, that's because of an old window tax that was charged on the number of windows a property had. In order to pay less tax, the poor members of society filled in many of their windows.
But the tax has since been abolished, hasn't it? So windows could all be opened up again, surely?
Unfortunately, it would appear that the residents of this district can't afford to pay to have the work done.
Yes, that is a sad state of affairs.
Especially for people like poor Mr. Natsume, who have to live all cooped up in a windowless room.
I suppose that's the price you pay for living in a very cheap accommodation.
It all seems rather pointless when you put it like that.
It indeed does. It indeed does. What a strange law. What governments sometimes do to just make money, that's just stupid. London's blanketed in fog again today and the sky is covered in cloud. But if you look carefully in the distance, you can just make out the Crystal Tower being built.
Ah, the Crystal Tower, yes. The centerpiece of the the Great Exhibition that's to open in 6 months' time.
Everyone's talking about the Great Exhibition of London at the moment, it seems.
Well, it's to be the largest event of its kind anywhere in the world, with technology and scientists from all over. I can't wait for it myself.
Do you think visiting students from the Far East like us will be granted entry?
The last Great Exhibition that was held in London had more than 6 million visitors, it seems. And this time, the British are determined to make it an even bigger success to outdo the Paris Exposition.
I see, that's an incredible number of people. And with so many people expected to attend, we should easily be able to slip in unnoticed.
There's always the honest approach of buying tickets at the main entrance, Mr. Naruto.
Yeah, that's true. Alright, so this is the Crystal Tower that is being built right now. So, what is happening here? This was the crime scene, by the way. At least everybody thought so, because actually the knife was got to the back of Miss Green here, over here. But Rowley Beats, who was the constable who saw the incident first, moved it here so he wouldn't be responsible for it, as because it would have been on his beat, and this is off his beat. So if you haven't watched it, once again, go to my channel, click on playlist, and watch that case. It was a really cool case, by the way. Every case was pretty nice actually until now. So is there anything to check out here? The snowman, nothing else it seems. Okay, let's have a look at the snowman. Why has somebody built the snowman on some sort of pedestal, do you think?
That's not a pedestal, Mr. Naruto. That's part of the snowman's body.
Really? But it already has a perfectly good body.
Well, it's true that British snowmen are usually made with 2 balls of snow. Perhaps this is a foreigner.
And now we're looking at him as a strange, poor man. I know how he feels.
If anything, it's Japanese and British 2-ball snowmen that are the strange ones, isn't it? After all, real people do have 3 sections: head, torso and legs.
Do you ever think that perhaps you think about things too much? That's a good question. But I think it's a good thing that we have a judicial assistant that thinks a lot. So, alright, we have checked out everything here. Oh, misclick. Yeah, but we're gonna skip through real quick. Done, alright. So let's move. Where to next? Where to next? I guess we have to go to prison? No, not us, but we have to visit Mr. Natsume in the prison, I guess. But since we are very close to hit the half-hour mark, guys, I'm going to end this episode here. If you want to know how things unfold further, you'll have to tune in next time for the next episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles Resolve. See you then.